All right, hey everyone, thank you for sharing part of your day with us. Welcome to the SkillUp Show. I'm Ross Van Wyk, an account executive.
And I'm Caleb Malik, an account executive turned marketing director. Here on the show, we talk with individual contributors, those folks who are carrying the bag every single day. You're going to hear one actionable tactic today, and then we're going to talk about career wisdom that you can use to grow your career tomorrow and into the future.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. And today we have Chandra. Avi is going to teach us about discovery call structure. And then we're going to explore his background a bit to uncover some career wisdom that he's learned along his journey, starting out as an SDR, progressing up to where he is today, as a sales manager. So we're really excited to learn from you, Avi, and it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. How are we doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Just touch base a little bit on call structure and how we can get a solid discovery done for a call, right? I think the biggest things that we look at, or I guess the biggest takeaways that I've had from my personal experience, is that most people that we're calling, at least in the tech space, or really any space, really, they're pretty complacent with where they're at, right? They're not going to be open to wanting to try out new things because it's going to take time, money, which obviously, in today's day and age, we just don't have that, right? So the biggest thing is being able to push people out of their comfort zones, making them understand that there are other tools out there that might be a better fit and might be able to address those challenges. So getting them out of that complacent zone. So I think the biggest things, and what I like to tell my reps, is that I like to use the analogy of Inception for the calls, right? Like, pretend you're Leonardo DiCaprio. You're you're in the you're in the dream, in the situation, the call, right? And your goal is to take them down this pathway, to get them to understand and for them to come to the conclusion themselves of, hey, like, this is something that might be important to me, or it might be important to the team. It might be a better, solution that's out there. Maybe I should take a look into this, and it might be beneficial for my company and I to maybe progress down this pathway further, right? Mm-hmm. And so the biggest things is that you want to be able to set up your call for success. A big part of it, at least from what my personal experience and what I've been seeing from some of my reps, is that you're going to be asking questions all over the place. There is no actual line of questioning for you to be able to get to the main conclusion, which is getting in my role, getting the meeting, right? So for a lot of my reps, what I've developed is kind of this before scenario, after scenario call structure with a PBO at the end, right? Positive business outcome of, like, what is the company solving? What is the challenge they're solving? How are we solving that for them, right? So I have it like divvied up. So beginning, before scenario, we want to learn a little bit more about the current environment. So you want to go into a call kind of figuring out, hey, like, what tools are you currently using for your different processes, regardless of whatever space you're in, but figuring out what's the current environment, what tool are you using, right? Once you're able to figure out that tool, you can go one of two ways. You can either try to go down and find the decision-making process, or you can try to go down and find more pains and challenges, right? It depends on what you feel more comfortable, kind of the situation and on what you're in, right, for the call. And sorry, I think I jumped a little bit ahead. Let me take a few steps back. So when it comes to the actual call structure, right, there's a couple of things that you're looking for. You're looking for figuring out problems and challenges for a company, right? You're trying to figure out the influence, which is the DM process. You're typically trying to figure out evaluation, timeline, things like that. Maybe even budget, depending on what your company is requiring, what KPIs and what specific things your company is requiring, right? In this situation, in order to get to the meeting, you need to be able to have all these certain things, certain points addressed, right? You need to figure out what each one is. So when it comes down to it, you start out with the current tool, current environment, figuring out what it is, get into it, right? So a good question I like to ask for a DM process is, hey, like, did you have a hand or a role in implementing this solution, right? If you were to ask this question right away, depending on who you're talking to, they'll either say yes or no. If they say yes, then great. That means you have a decision maker in front of you. It might not be the whole DM team, but at least one of them, right, or a solid champion. And if they say no, then hey, that means that's better, because then you can actually go in and figure out what the pain points are really with this tool, right? Because typically if it's a DM that implemented it, it's usually their baby, right? They're not going to be, it was their idea. They're not going to be talking about, hey, like, this is what the problem is, because that was my idea. So you want to be careful, right? And you want to be able to address both ways, right? And so once you figure out the DM, kind of go a little bit deeper, you can ask a little bit about contract cycles, how long they've used the solution. That's a good way to kind of figure out evaluation timeline. Cool thing with evaluation timeline is that you can either find it right now, you can find it later on in the call, at least in my opinion. But it's just really, how do you set up yourself to figure that out? So going back, find out how long have you had the solution for, and once they say 2 or 3 years, that's typically, you'll think of a software as usually a 2 to 3 year contract, right? Around usually that's what we'll see. So when it comes down to it, if you're able to have this idea of, if they're at 2.5 years have been using it, or just 2 years, whatever it is, then you can get a general idea. It's like, okay, hey, maybe they're looking at potentially evaluating a tool sometime in the next year, 6 months to a year, right? And I know, but typically most ADRs and SDRs and BDRs, all different but the same, in certain ways. They all typically have this, guideline of, hey, in order for me to book this meeting or to get the evaluation timeline, there needs to be a project within 6 months to a year. That's usually what I've seen. So that's where you can figure that out. And then, once you can ask these questions, you can go deeper into the pains and challenges. A couple of great questions I like to ask, at least in terms of the space that I'm in, right, with tech, is, how long does it take you to create dashboards or reports, or, budgets, or whatever it is, whatever you're trying to sell. Asking the timeline, or like, how long is it taking you to do these things, right? And so what you want to do is you want to ask the basic question, and then you want to make sure you follow up with an impact or layering/impact question. Because the whole purpose of this is that you get the initial pain, right? It's like, hey, it's taking us, a day or two to create these reports. Okay, well, that's great, but what does that actually mean? Like, why is that impactful, right? And so then you want to go and be like, what would it mean to you if we're able to provide a solution that's maybe able to do it quicker, right? And typically, if you use numbers, that's usually or like a quantitative number, that's usually a lot more hard hitting than just being general time, right? So it's like, what would it mean to you if we're able to decrease that from a day to just a matter of minutes, right? Or whatever the numbers are. But once you kind of ask this impact question, that gets that prospect who's already complacent, happy with what they already have, to kind of start thinking like, hey, maybe there are, it would be nice to have a tool that's a little bit quicker. It would just make things more efficient, right? Because nowadays everybody's going for more of an efficient process all around, right? And so diving a little bit deeper, and then hitting them with the real value, right? The reason why I asked this question is because, here at my company, we're actually able to help people in your situation, or other, in the situation we talk to VPs of product or directors of product, right? Other product leaders in your space that are experiencing similar challenges to taking a while to create these reports. We're able to do that right away, right? And then you're able to kind of hit them with the value, and while at the same time getting them to think about like, hey, maybe there is something better out there, right? So you're just reinforcing what you're trying to say. And then you want to go down this and maybe try to get 2 to 3 challenges and pains, right? And so once you get these pains and challenges, then you have your little bit of your before scenario of, this is what the current environment is, this is what their pains and challenges that they're dealing with. Now we want to figure out what the after scenario. The way we figure this out is by figuring out, what are they looking for? What is the ideal solution? What are their pains? Their pains, now how can we fix that for them, right? What are they looking for? How can their process be better? And so, in this situation, you can go in and just ask them like, hey, what you mentioned that you have XYZ challenge. Just out of curiosity, for your next tool that you have, what would you want to see out of it? What would an ideal tool look like for you, right? And then once you're kind of able to dive in deeper and figure out what they're looking for, and typically by this point, it's going to be, every call is different, right? Some people might not want to give it to you, but other times, typically if you're this far into the call and you've figured out the pains and challenges, they're going to be pretty open to telling you what they want to see, right? And so once you figure out, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is what would be ideal to me, then you can go in deeper and one, you can go into evaluation timeline again, right? And be like, how much of a priority is it for your team to address these XYZ challenges with the next tool you get, right? And then you're not asking them directly, like, you have a project in place, because obviously that might turn people, especially higher up people, away from wanting to talk with you more, because it's very salesy. So take a step back and be like, hey, how much of a priority is it for you? And at this point, I mean, you know, obviously every call is different, but usually the prospect will most likely tell you like, yeah, this will probably be a priority for us later on this year. It's on our product roadmap, whatever it is, right? In your conclusion, trying to go for the meeting, right? It's like, hey, you told me XYZ challenge. This is what you're looking for. Based off of everything that you've told me, I think we can help solve this for your company by doing this. Let's set a meeting, right? Or let's, you know, set 10, 15 minutes aside where my account executive or platform specialist, whatever you say, right, is able to sit down with us or sit down with you and is able to go a little bit more in depth into how we're able to address these challenges that you're currently facing, right? And then you go on and typically you're able to get the meeting. So that's kind of like the call structure I like to have for my teams, is just kind of having them know the line of questioning they want to go down and figuring out, hey, if I run into a wall, how do I pivot? What's another way I can go down and whatnot. So.
Yeah, man, this is great. Honestly, when you said discovery call structure at the beginning, I got really excited, and because that's a topic near and dear to my heart, and something I get really excited about. And I taken notes here, so if you saw me typing, that was what I was taking notes, because I feel like I can always learn something from other sales leaders. And honestly, I really like this structure of how you start with before, then how you use situational questions to uncover kind of any existing problems and kind of the current landscape of the tech they're using, and then being able to take that a step further and dig into like the business impact, which is, to your point, going to compel change, you know, or at least compel them to explore change and take that meeting with an account executive. I guess I'm really surprised that you have SDRs that can handle this. I guess, you know, what does the account executive do after this? Because this is a lot of the bulk of the discovery. So like, how often do you find like SDRs actually get to have this conversation versus, you know, they just do some email exchanges and then book a meeting?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the reason why we have this call structure in place and what we've been seeing is that nowadays, you know, the prospects that we're reaching out to, you got to have something to hold them to the meeting. There's definitely, at least recently, I think across companies that I've worked at and what I've been seeing from even some of my fellow leaders, is that there is a consensus that, you know, these prospects are not coming to the meetings because there's not enough to hold them to the actual meeting. If we just get the meeting, like we have a lot of ADRs that are really great at setting meetings, right? But then there's always the instance of, hey, sometimes these guys no show. But then when we actually go back and diagnose it as to what happened on the call, it's like, hey, you got a pain, but you didn't actually talk about why that pain was impactful, right? Like why is that pain such a big deal, and why should they come and look at something new, right? So it's like more so after looking at this, we realized that we need to dig in deeper into these different types of, you know, key I guess portions of the call in order to be able to hold the prospect to taking the meeting. So now when you send out the calendar invite with the agenda and everything on there, then that matches up with what you talked about. And then you're able to say like, hey, this is exactly what we're going to talk about. This is what you mentioned to me. This is what my AE is going to go deeper into. And this is what they're going to talk about and show you how we're able to alleviate these challenges for you.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I think if, you know, for all the listeners out there, if you're struggling with, you know, getting people to show up to your meetings and, you know, you have a high no-show rate, you know, what Avi is telling you here is that if you use a framework, when you go into your discovery calls, you're going to create more value for, you know, for your prospects, and you're going to compel them to want to show up to that meeting because they're going to, you know, you've uncovered, hey, there's some challenges here, and you've alluded to, we can help you with those, a better future state, as, you know, as Avi had put it. So yeah, I think that's a really great way to approach it.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've talked about at least on our blog about the, you know, this idea of micro commitments, and that's something that a lot of salespeople are, I think, are, you know, familiar with, and that it's like, how do you get them to commit to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and think about that as like a sale, right? And so if we think about closing a deal, these are the sorts of things that you want to know, is like, what are the pain points? Why are they buying? Those are like, that's why you're able to commit deals and be able to say like, this is going to come through for these reasons. And you're implementing that at like a really early stage to get people to show up to, for lots of reasons. But one of the positive outcomes is that people are actually showing up to meetings and follow through on that. You know, they follow through on that micro commitment. And one of the things that, you know, in my short stint as a salesperson, I found worked really well is you told me, right? Like you told me that you want this to be year of the lead. This is the plan that we put together for that. What's the deal? Like, why are we not signing off on this? In your case, you know, it's you told me that this was going to be a priority towards the end of the year. It was going to be for these reasons. You told me that in your ideal state, when we reduce your reporting time, yada, yada, yada. So why are we not having this meeting, right? Like, why are you not showing up? Like, you know, like that sort of thing, right? And so I think that's really, really effective. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. And I think also if if there's SDRs listening, implementing something like this at this stage of being in the SDR role is only going to set you up for so much more success as an account executive. I mean, that's, one of the hardest part of the sales process is nailing the discovery. I mean, everything else is built upon the foundation of what you learn in discovery. And so, starting today with putting a structure like this in place and really building upon that throughout your career is going to be super powerful for you, which could be a nice time to transition. I know we only have Avi for, probably 10 or 15 more minutes. He's a busy guy, so could be a good transition to dig into some career stuff. So for that, I'll pass it over to Caleb.
Yeah, absolutely. So we said, in the intro, we talked to those folks who are kind of carrying the bag, and you did that for like a long time, right? And now you're in a leadership role, and so love hearing the things that you're teaching your reps to do based on your experience. One of the things that we were curious about is, we hear from a lot of younger reps like, hey, when do I make the transition to AE or to lead a team of SDRs, or like, how do I make that decision? When am I ready? What does that look like? Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience and what you learned during that transition and how you went about making that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a crazy time for me. I mean, when I got moved up to a team lead role, a team lead for the ADR role at my last company, that's when it kind of really set in, where it's like, okay, there's definitely a lot more stuff that goes into this role aside from just your day to day where you're carrying the bag, right? It's like you got to be ready to be able to be a leader on the team. You have to be able to answer questions. You have to be able to, be able to teach people, coach them on how to get better, right? And that's one of the biggest things I think I learned as a leader, is that you have to understand that every person has their own sales cycle, or sales process, sales style, really. No one is the same. If there was a silver bullet for a sales style, right, then we'd all be making millions, right? And that'd be great, but that's just not how it is. So you got to be able to, as a leader, be able to adapt to that and be able to understand, like, hey, everybody learns a different way. You need to be able to bring up things that are relevant to each person, right? That would make sense with them. I mean, some people are motivated by money, right? It's just, you want to make more money. Some people are motivated by career opportunity and career growth. Some people are just motivated by being leaders on the team, right? It really depends on what the person's motivation is. And so I guess personally for me, when I realized that I wanted to go into this leadership role, I mean, I've always wanted to go into leadership, really, even out of college. I always want to go into a leadership role. But it was awesome when I remember when I was a team lead, and there was one of the guys on my team he was struggling a little bit, didn't quite understand like what was going on. So I would sit down with him and kind of diagnose, like we'd go through call reviews, we would go through his workflow, and I just show him like, hey, maybe there's some things that can make your workflow a little bit more efficient, or make your calls a little bit better, can hit a little bit harder with your prospects. And slowly he was actually able to get better, and he ended up hitting quota that month. And like that was a big turnaround in his life for him. So just seeing that and being able to help someone like that, and just being able to be that leader was just amazing to me. It was a great feeling. And after that, I was just like, I kind of like this. I kind of want to keep doing this. I want to help people get better. I want to see people succeed and really bring out the best in them. So I would say those are kind of the main things that made me want to move into this leadership role.
So it sounds like it's a little bit of when it becomes more fun to help other people close deals than closing your own deals. That's when it's time to make the move and get into leadership. Is that about right?
Oh yeah, to a certain extent, right? I mean, if you like to close deals and make a lot of money, then hey, that's great, right? Stay the individual contributor. But like, if you like to, I mean, it's not like you're not gonna make money. You're still gonna make money, but like, if you're okay with maybe making a little bit less money, but helping people succeed, right? And we really care about that, then yeah, leadership would definitely be a good role for you.
What I really like about your story there, Avi, is that time and time again you see people who go into sales management because they've done an account executive role, they've been at the top of the leaderboard, their organization's like, well, like, let's promote you to a sales manager, like, why not, like, you're a leader on the team as far as like quota attainment goes. But they're not really like in it for the right reasons, and that they don't really want to develop other people, and they don't really want to learn how to coach and do those sorts of activities, which is so much more what a management role is about versus monitoring dashboards and closing deals still. So it's like, so that kind of going back, like, that's what I really like about your motivations to get into management. I think you're in it for the right reasons, and I think that's if anybody's listening and they're kind of wondering like, how should I progress my career in sales, I think it's really about Do you enjoy only worrying about your own quota and hitting your own numbers and cashing your own commission checks? Or do you want to help others develop their careers? And is that where you get more enjoyment? And yeah, you make good money along the way too, but it's more about, developing other people and helping them find success, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And you should really see if that's really something you want to do, right? I mean,
yeah.
it feels good at the beginning, but there's definitely a lot of there are things that happen, right? There's a lot of obstacles in the way, and you got to overcome those, and it's a constant fight, right? To be in this leadership role and constantly helping reps and whatnot. But if you truly love doing that, then this is definitely the right role for you, right? And to touch a little bit more to Ross, to your point, like I completely agree with you on that in terms of some managers might not be in this role for the right reason. There's definitely a lot of micromanagers out there and things like that, right? Where it's not a great work experience, right? And a lot of times the managers was the person that makes or breaks a role for you, right?
Yeah,
you could be getting paid a lot of money, but if you don't have a great manager, then you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be happy. Your manager's not going to be happy, and then the company's not going to be happy. So it's all it all goes up the line like that. So you really want to make sure that if this is the role for you, you want to make sure you know what you're getting into, and you're okay with that, right? So that's pretty much the advice I would give.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit, because you talked about like it was so much fun helping people out. I helped this guy hit his quota. Like you have we got the sunny stories, and then you've kind of alluded to like obstacles, and then kind of jumped over those real quick. So what are some of the obstacles that you have run across, and like what are some of the challenges of being in leadership that maybe those people who, especially the people who aren't in it for the right reasons, and just want to get the money, that they just maybe see the money, they see the leadership, and they don't realize all the baggage that kind of comes with it. So talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had a leadership role in previous companies as well. And, some of the challenges are just like, you're going to have disagreements with either other managers, your directors, VPs, whoever it is, right? There will be disagreements. You're not going to agree with the new sales strategy that they're implementing or whatever it is. And then the biggest part is that if you don't agree with it, you still have to, tell that to your reps, and you got to teach your reps the new sales style or the new whatever that, the company is trying to implement. And those are just like one of the challenges. Like other challenges are like you're going to have to be able to deal with op disputes. You're going to have to be able to deal with just like being able to handle different types of objections, either with from other managers or even from your own team, right? You're going to have to deal with someone that you might not just mesh well with, right? And you're going to have to figure out how are you going to go about your day, and how are you going to go about being able to be that supportive manager that's there to help them and not get, sidetracked by whatever difficult rep you might have, right? There's always going to be that. And so it's just like you're going to have to be able to overcome those different challenges by, just I don't know, working around it. I don't know much more I can say to that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like, a lot of people get into that mindset of like, well, when I'm in charge, I'll be in charge, like I'll get to, I'll handle these op disputes perfectly, and I'll get to set the sales strategy. And it's like, oh wait, like you got to remember this comes from like 3 levels of, yeah. Enjoy when you're the CRO, then you can finally like, and I think people don't realize that about leadership roles, is that like, yeah, just because you got into one doesn't mean that there's not, still layers above you that you have no control over what's going on. And now you have to deal with the reps who are complaining and not be the rep who's complaining. And there's just a lot of stuff that comes with leadership. So yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that we were curious to hear from you as well is that you recently made a bit of a lateral move, at least in title. And so we kind of want to hear a little bit about that and kind of what goes into a decision around that, because, reps are in that same situation as well. Like, do I stay at the same place and be a BDR here, and then I go somewhere else and be a BDR, or AE and AE to AE? Like, when do you know to move orgs? Kind of, can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing, at least for me, is that I always I try to be happy. I try to be happy with my day to day. If I'm not happy, that's just, it makes life a whole lot harder, right? Already coming into sales, you have to have that positive mindset, be energetic, be okay with dealing with being told, no every single day, and facing that rejection nonstop. So it's like, you got to take solace in the small wins and just be happy with your day to day. And my big thing is with my last company, what I realized that it was a great company. I had a lot of great experience, learned a lot of great stuff there. But just realized that I wasn't 100% happy, and I know that if I'm not 100% happy, I'm not going to be able to perform at my 100%. And you know, there are times that obviously you got to suck it up and just deal with it. There are things like that, but you know, after a while, I'm sure all you sales, you know, sales guys and gals, like you guys know, you know, once you start to feel really unhappy and you know, it's just not working anymore, you're not going to be successful in that role, right? So that was kind of what it was for me. Is just I had gained a lot of great experience as a great company, but I was just starting to be a little unhappy in that role. And you know, my current boss that's here at the company that I'm at, he was just a great boss that I had at my last company. And to give some more context, he came in there and was there for a little bit, and then he ended up coming back to this new company. And you know, once he you know, I'd seen him go over there, and we had talked a little bit. You know, he had mentioned like, hey, you know, we're looking for another leader, another manager in this position. Would you be interested? And I loved working under him, and I thought he had a great vision. So that was kind of what it is. It was a two-part thing where I was, you know, I think it was a time for me to move on just so I could start to feel happy again. And secondly, it was more so, you know, I knew I had a great manager, a great leader right over me, and a great leadership team in general over me. And so those were kind of the things that really pushed me into coming to this new role.
Yeah, I really like that. You know, I've heard that from so many people that, you know, life is short, you know, do what makes you happy, right? And to your point, sometimes you got to suck it up. But I think that there's a lot to be said in the sales role. Like you want to enjoy what you're doing and the company that you're representing. And, you know, you want to feel like you're learning and growing and all of those things. And then what you said really actually ties in with what another guest told us. And that was a sales career is all about aligning yourself to great people. That's how you build a solid career in sales, because I mean, every company is trying to sell you on why you should come sell for them. They all have, you know, 80% of their pipeline is inbound leads. The, you know, 100% of the reps are at quota. Like everybody's going to sell you on why you should come to them. But at the end of the day, if you align yourself to really great people, you can kind of cut through some of that, dare I say, bullshit, and, you know, align to good people and good companies that way. So that's kind of what I'm hearing come through.
Absolutely. And yeah, it just goes back to my point of like a manager can make or break your role, right? And so I definitely agree. Having good leadership and knowing that there is you know, potential and there's vision, right? That's a big part of what I look for, is that there's vision for, you know, development of this company, and being able to not only learn myself and increase my, you know, own I guess knowledge, right? But then to also see there's actually going to be growth in the company as well. So definitely.
That's some really great advice. And it is more great advice on top of other great advice, on top of great tips, on top of great questions to ask and talk tracks and all that. So, you know, Avi, this has been wonderful. This has been a great conversation. We really appreciate it. And we know, you know, you've got other things to be doing today. You got deals to close. So we're going to let you go. And we really do appreciate it. If there are people out there listening that want to come on the show, you can reach us at info@careerskillup.com. That is our email address. Send us a note there. Avi, people, where should they connect with you? Are you like a Twitter guy, LinkedIn? What's the best place?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say LinkedIn is definitely the best place to connect with me for sure.
All right, perfect. Well, we will encourage people to do that. And thank you again for your time today.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.